Welcome YouTube, this is Barrett from RProgrammingTutorials.com, and today we're going to be looking at DataFrames Part 2. So in the first tutorial on DataFrames, we looked at what a data frame is, we looked at an example of a data frame, which was the empty cars data frame. We looked at the head function, the tail function, the dimension function, and the column names function. So today we're going to be working with data frames again, and specifically with the empty cars data frame, and we're going to be extracting specific elements out of that data frame. So we're going to extract specific columns, specific rows, and actual specific values out of that data frame. So let's get started. First, let's define a variable called data, and let's set it equal to empty cars. Now this is just for convenience. We don't need to do this. I'm just defining this variable data as I did in the previous lesson so that we can access the empty cars data, but you could also just replace everything I do with data with the empty cars variable, and that would work also. So let's look at the head of our data. Press enter, and we see here that we have some cars. There are in fact 32 of them in all. And we have some variables here with some different columns. And let's say we wanted to access this value 21, which represents the Mazda RX-4's mile per gallon. What we do is we type in data and we type in 1, 1. This represents row 1, column 1, or row 1, column 1. Okay? And we get back 21. We could type in data row 1, column 2, and we get back row 1, column 2, or the number of cylinders in the Mazda RX-4. We could look at data, we could look at car or vehicle 2, and we could look at the third column, which would be its displacement, and we get 160. So that's a simple way, using just numbers, to access specific elements in our data frame. Remember, we look at the row number first and then the column number. So on the left is the row number, on the right is the column number, and they're separated by commas. There is a more descriptive method we can do. We can look at what are called row names and column names. So row names of data, press enter, and we see that each of our rows has a name. The first one is Mazda RX-4, the second one is Mazda RX-4 WAG, Datsun 710, and so on. We can look at our column names, which we've done before, of data. And we'll see each column has a name, miles per gallon, cylinder, displacement, and so on. So now going back to head of data, if we wanted to again look at this 21, we could look at row Mazda RX-4 in miles per gallon column. So we do data of, in quotes, Mazda RX-4. And now remember that capitalization matters, and that, so these are all lowercase for miles per gallon, and the Mazda RX-4 has a capital M, it's a capital R, and a capital X. So capitalization matters. R is case sensitive. So we press enter and we get back 21 as desired. This is looking at the Mazda RX-4 row and the miles per gallon column. We could look at the Datsun 710 row, column, cylinder, and we get 4. Datsun 710, cylinder, and we get 4. So that's a little more descriptive method. If you are writing code that someone in the future is going to look at, you might want to use that method if it makes sense. Sometimes it doesn't make sense, but you know, it's a little more readable, so you're going to have to weigh the back and forth between it's more readable, but it's a little, bit more complicated to type out. So you're just going to have to weigh that cost-benefit analysis yourself. So now that we've looked at extracting specific entries within our data set, let's look at accessing entire columns or rows. So the way we do that in R is we type in data, and say we wanted to access the first column, the miles per gallon column. We type a comma, so we're leaving our row blank, and what that means is we're saying grab all rows and grab the first column, and we get back the miles per gallon column. Okay, now if we wanted to grab the second column, we type in data, leave the rows blank, that means grab all rows, second column. We could grab all rows and grab the 11th column. So we're going to type in head data, and we'll see that we grab the 11th column in this last example. We grab 441121, 441121, and etc. So we can also grab a certain row. So we can look at data. Let's grab the first row. And if we grab the first row, we want to grab all columns. So we're going to leave the columns blank. So we grab the first row, the Mazda RX-4. We left the all columns blank so that it grabs all columns. And then we see them all listed out here. Now this actually produces a data frame when you do it this way, which is okay. That's not a big deal. That's because you're looking at a specific row in the data frame and you're just grabbing that first row. Now when you're grabbing a column, you're grabbing a column of data, so it's a little bit different, and it's actually a vector. So you don't need to worry about that just yet. It's just to let you know that when you're grabbing a row, you get a data frame. When you're grabbing a column, you get a vector. And the way you can tell that, just to kind of solidify this, is that if you look at class of data, row 1, all columns, you'll see data frame. So it's a data frame. If you look at class of data, all rows, first column, you'll see it says numeric, which means it's a numeric type vector. So that's a slight difference, but like I said, don't worry about it right now. It's just two different ways that R treats the two different types of whether you're working with a row or whether you're working with a column. So you can also you can grab specific chunks. So say we wanted to grab the first 3 cars and the first 3 columns. The way we do that is we'd say data of, we want columns 1 through 3, and we want rows 1 through 3, and we want columns 1 through 3. And then we get rows 1 through 3, we get columns 1 through 3. This is just like vectors. When we included a vector inside of a vector, we got back a vector which represented whatever elements in that vector we're putting in there. So we could do data, and we want rows 1, 3, and we want columns 1 through 4. This is grabbing the first and third row in columns 1 through 4. Or we could do data of, say, the first 5 rows, and then we want columns 2 and 5. That's going to give us columns 2 and 5 for the first 5 data entries. So you can see we can grab chunks by putting in vectors into our row and column entries. And that's pretty much going to conclude our tutorial on accessing specific elements of a data frame, accessing chunks of elements. We looked at accessing, elements or a specific element by using, like 1, 1 or 2, 1. So accessing with specific numbers. We looked at accessing using the quotes method, which you could give it a specific row name, a specific column name. We looked at grabbing columns and rows by numbers, and we looked at grabbing columns and rows by specific column and row names. So that's going to cover what we're going to do today. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and you learned a lot from it. Subscribe to the channel. That way you get updated on future videos. Check out RProgrammingTutorials.com. It's an excellent resource. We have articles, videos. We've brought it all together into one website. This YouTube series is just a small portion of a much larger chunk of information. So check out RProgrammingTutorials.com. Have a great day, a great morning, a great night, whatever time of the day it is, and I thank you for watching this video.